Hello, everybody. All right. Well, welcome to the Mikestand. Today is, of course, Monday, October 20th, 2025. I hope everybody had a good weekend. Hopefully, some of you caught the show last night. Metal and I, even though we only got through one of the stories I'd planned, or one of the features I'd planned for the night. We had some interesting things that we went over as well in terms of just looking back to some historical stuff. Um, Friendly reminder, everybody, of course, as we give people a chance to come in. If you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So with that being said, I said we're going to wait a few minutes. Did get started on this. I'm almost done with my cartoon watching from 1941, where finally into December here. And there's a general feeling of holiday cheerfulness, as with some other interesting things like we're starting to see more of the wartime cartoons start up, as a few of them were released just before. Well, there's one that was released just like a few days before America officially entered World War II, with $21 a day once a month, which was Walter Land's production. It was the first of the Swing Symphony series that ran from 1941 to 1945. Then of course I also saw today. Let's see. Oh yeah, I saw the third Tom and Jerry cartoon the night before Christmas, a holiday themed cartoon. Okay, what else did I see? Rhapsody and Rivets from Warner Brothers. Let's see. Oh, and the first in the Fox and the Crow series from Screen Gems Columbia Pictures, The Fox and the Grapes. So that was also pretty interesting one to watch. So now we do three. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about what's on tap for tonight. We're at the 3 minute mark, just past it. 3 people in here. So tonight I'm gonna go over a couple of articles, both from MeTV Tunes. I might add in another one depending upon the time and all that. As MeTV, a lot of these profile articles from MeTV Tunes tend to go pretty quickly. The first one is how Chuck Jones and Ray Bradbury came up with the Halloween tree. So it would have been the cartoon collab of the century. I believe the two of them were working on, I guess, a Halloween special called the Halloween Tree. And then we're going to look at how Velma discovered Daphne, from Scooby-Doo fame. So look at how their bestie relationships started. Let's see. Plus, of course, we'll have the wrestling wrap up, getting all caught up on all the latest in the world of professional wrestling. Get caught up, of course, from Friday Night SmackDown in San Jose. Get caught up with what happened at Wrestle Dream. It's quite a bit that happened in the AEW pay-per-view. And then we'll look ahead to tonight's Raw, as, of course, WWE has already started the build towards Survivor Series next month. So with all that being said, and we know that AEW will have its Continental Classic probably around the corner. Well, I don't know if they'll have it now that they unified the two titles, the Continental and the International title, but I guess we'll wait and see. See how that all pans out. But with that being said, why don't we go ahead and get ready to get started here then? We're at the 5 minute mark now, so I'll go ahead and pull up first article of the evening. Of course, we'll finish off with this day in each history as well. So, but with all that being said, as I said, again, one last friendly reminder before we get started to both my Rumble and YouTube viewers. If you guys haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, and with all that being said, let's get into it. Here we go with our first story of the night. Alrighty then. So, how Chuck Jones and Ray Bradbury came up with the Halloween tree. Now, of course, we talked about Chuck Jones before because Chuck Jones known for his work with Warner Brothers and MGM over the years as a going from being an animator to director to even producer. Ray Bradbury is known for his sci-fi work, writing some sci-fi classics. So, it would have been the cartoon collab of the century. So, article published October 17th, which would have been last Thursday, by MTV Toonstown. All right, so let's get into this. The creation of Ray Bradbury's classic novel and cartoon, The Halloween Tree, actually begins with another Halloween cartoon. It was Halloween 1967. And It's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown was the first half-hour primetime Halloween special. Of course, Charlie Brown specials, which were done by the Mendelsohn brothers over the years. Excited for the Charlie Brown cartoon, Ray Bradbury watched the premiere with his family and left fairly disappointed. He wanted a Halloween special that was more focused on the spookiness and the history of Halloween, and he knew one friend would agree with him on this, Chuck Jones. So Chuck Jones and Ray Bradbury were friends. That's an interesting little tidbit right there. All right. Continuing on here. Yes, once again, Mark the Chuck Jones is secretly involved, quote unquote, or smaller quote, quote unquote, square on your MeTV Tunes bingo card because that man was friends with everybody. Jones and Bradbury met for lunch to discuss The Great Pumpkin and how they thought a Halloween cartoon should be. Bradbury even brought Jones an oil painting he had made previously of a Halloween tree filled with jack-o'-lanterns in the branches. Both men felt that there was so much more Halloween than the cartoon they had just watched. Well, I think what the Mendelssohns were trying to do is keep it still family friendly too. That's why you didn't have it as much with the primetime special, family oriented, Halloween special. You don't want to give the kids nightmares or anything like that. But there are some people who might say, yeah, well, the kids can survive that. Jones also felt like there was a lack of Halloween spirit amongst the youth, as Bradbury recalled Jones saying, quote, "Some kids rang my bell," unquote. Chuck said, "and when I opened the door, they cried, 'Trick or treat!' I yelled back, 'Trick!' which stunned and surprised them. So one little boy ran out on the lawn and stood on his head In the old days, if I hadn't handed out treats, they would have soaked my windows or um, firecrackered my mailbox. I stared at all these kids dressed up as witches, mummies, and ghosts, and asked them why they dressed that way. No one knew. They had no roots in the past. Hmm. Come to think of it, I don't really know if a lot of people do really know too much the history of Halloween and how that all started, because I don't know if it gets talked about as much. I know Christians are kind of anti-Halloween because of the whole pagan elements of like the monsters and all that. You know, usually to kind of counteract the Halloween side of it, a lot of Christians will do what they call the Harvest Festival, and will have like the usually set up their little events in their parking lots. You know. Um, Anyways, Bradbury also felt that the spiritual side of Halloween, the remembrance of the dead, had been forgotten. Feeling the same frustrations they voice through Moundstroud in the movie, Jones said, quote, "Why don't we make a cartoon to teach people why they wear bones and sneeze mummy dust?" Unquote. And the two creative titans got to work on teaching the world about the wonders of Halloween. Chuck Jones then pitched the idea to MGM. Now in 1967, of course, Jones was working with MGM. He was working on a lot of the Tom and Jerry cartoons of that time period in the 60s there. Late 60s in particular. A spooky half-hour Halloween cartoon focused on the history of Halloween, written by Bradbury, directed and produced by Jones. MGM greenlit the project. Both men were excited about the project, especially Bradbury, who wrote, quote, "I'm writing a film. It's going to be a cartoon by Chuck Jones. A wonderful man to work with. Its history of Halloween in cartoon form. It's going to be a heck of a lot of fun." I think I can see where if this cartoon was not made, I have a feeling I know why it might have not been made, but something tells me it actually was made. But let's see, because they said here it would have been a wonderful collaboration. I wonder what happened. Maybe something happened between Bradbury and Jones, but let's just continue on here. But the spirit of Halloween had one more trick for Jones and Bradbury. MGM shut down its animation division before the cartoon could be. That's right. In the late 60s, there they decided that they were done making cartoon shorts at that point. So Bradbury went on to write Halloween Tree and a novel, and 20 years later, eventually created the cartoon version produced by Hanna-Barbera. Okay. For the 1993 cartoon, Bradbury won a Daytime Emmy for outstanding writing in an animated program. So granted, maybe he didn't get it. Maybe he didn't get to do it with Chuck Jones, but he still got it done. But it's just that he didn't get it done for MGM because they shut down their animation department at the time. So, anyways, so watch Me TV Tunes Spooktacular Sundays on Me TV Tunes. Sunday starting at 3 p.m. Eastern to Central, 12 noon Pacific. My guess is that Halloween Tree is going to be shown this Sunday. So, anyways, before we do go on, I do need to step away from the computer for a moment. I will be right back. I'll put some music on while I'm gone, so you guys, so at least it won't be dead air here. You can help out by liking and sharing the screen, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. I'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Anyways, I'll be right back. And I'm back, so we'll get ready to move on to the next article in a moment here. Let's see. Let me just double check for comments. Can anybody say anything yet? All right, so with that, I guess not. So I guess we'll get ready to move on then to the next piece here. Here's the second article we're going to do. How Velma discovered Daphne. Oh, this is going to be interesting, considering that it's kind of funny how they come up with these articles when in Scooby-Doo we never really got per se an origin to. I know in some of the more recent ones like Velma, the the much panned woke version we got a couple years ago with Mindy Kaling kind of personifying herself as Velma. We never really got much of an origin story on any of these characters. We kind of saw somewhat of an idea based, on Pup Named Scooby-Doo, but no real But then again, with cartoons, particularly humor cartoons, it's not necessarily about it's not like they're trying to tell these long arching story arcs. It's just basic formula for each episode. But anyways, how Velma discovered Daphne, a tale of two besties. Article published October 20, which is today by me, TV himself. So there you got Velma and Daphne right there with Scooby-Doo kind of in the middle, in the back seat there. Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Experienced a casting shakeup when the original voice of Daphne, Steffiana Christopherson, left the show. After playing Daphne for the first season of the hit cartoon, Christopherson and her husband moved to New York, which meant she could not continue the role. In the 2005 Scooby-Doo Where Are You Blu-ray special feature, the Scooby-Doo gang, in their own words, the cast of Scooby-Doo was interviewed about their roles on the show, and it's like, oh, okay, I see where they're going with this. Yeah, I'd heard about this. So they're talking about when I believe it was, I guess they'll say here, but I think it was, I don't remember if Heather North was the one who played Velma or was the second voice of Daphne, but how, okay, I think I know where they're going with this now. Basically, Velma's voice actress had brought it was a roommate of the girl who would eventually become Daphne's voice and had her audition. After Nicole so it was Heather North was the second voice of Daphne there. So I just looked in. Okay, so was interviewed about their roles on the show and its lasting legacy. One part of these interviews was with the voice actors of Velma and Daphne, discussing how Velma was the one who found the voice of Daphne. I guess in this case, Heather North. The voice of Velma Dingley, Nicole Jaffe, decided to look for the voice of Daphne herself, so they could get started on season 2. She found a perfect fit for Daphne, her roommate Heather North. A fellow actress, North had guest starred in shows like Gidget, The Monkees, and Green Acres, but had not found a full-time acting gig. Quote, Nicole Jaffe was my roommate and said, in smaller words, get in here. They're looking for Daphne. You can do Daphne. Unquote. North recalled. Quote, we could do this together. This would be great fun. Now imagine it, 2 roommates, right? 2 roommates. It's almost like art imitating life. So if we go on the premise that possibly, well, they're roommates, so maybe they were in real life, legit best friends, right? Obviously they're living together, in the same apartment or what have you, sharing expenses and all that, just living a life together as as besties. That might transfer over well into a cartoon series. So let's see. Jaffe recalled, in brackets, North, quote, North, was very right for the character. So when the other girl left, I called Heather. I said, in smaller quotes, come down right away and audition for this because I think you'd be terrific. Small quote. And again, feel free to comment and or ask questions if you guys have any, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. But for both my Rumble and my YouTube viewers, so don't be shy, as the saying goes. Let's see. Quote, I didn't always listen to her, but for this I did, unquote, North admitted. Quote, and I auditioned and got the part, unquote. And I believe Heather North would remain Daphne's voice from season 2 of Scooby-Doo Where Are You, well into the 80s, probably well into all the way up to the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo in 1986. Before of course they started switching voices around, and Kelly Martin took over the role of young Daphne and a pup named Scooby-Doo. And then later it was, of course, then we'd see some of the other people, including Mindy Cohn and Gray Delisle, who would come in and play Daphne after that. So, Daphne turned out to be the role of a lifetime that North would play for 33 years. So, oh wow, so she actually was there longer than I thought. Because that would have been about 1970, so that would have been 2003 then. She played Daphne in the original series as well as the new Scooby-Doo movies, the Scooby-Doo Show, Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo, the new Scooby-Doo Mysteries, the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, and many more television specials and movies. Okay, yeah, okay. So they would have brought her back to the movies, but I thought though, because I do know eventually Mindy Cohn took over the role. Actually, Mindy Cohn was actually Velma, I believe. Actually, now that I think about it, but bringing North into the Scooby-Doo fold was also a career change for Jaffe. Shortly after Scooby-Doo Where Are You ended, Jaffe retired from acting, became a talent agent. Okay, she formed her own agency, which was later merged and then sold to William Morris Agency. She represented celebrities like John Travolta, Whitney Houston, Patrick Swayze. All right, so yeah, it was Velma who would switch voices over the years as well. But quote, and that was my first job as an agent, was getting her this, unquote. Jaffe then entrusted Velma's glasses in the next voice actress's hands and used her experience with Daphne to help actors and musicians of all levels book their breakthrough gigs. Watch Scooby-Doo on MeTV Tunes weekdays at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 Central, 1:30 Pacific, and Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central, and 7 a.m. Pacific. All right, so there we go with that. Let's see, 28 minutes. So maybe let me go see if we find another quickie article somewhere. Maybe if not here, then at least maybe on one of the other sites I use here. Oh, no. Let's clear that part out for a moment here. All right, so let's see there. Yeah, that one we. Instead of tongue. This sounds interesting. This is a comic. All right, this one sounds interesting. All right, so I found something that sounds a little bit interesting here. Maybe some drama implied here. Let me go ahead and bring that up. from the comic book realm here. Comic book realm here. Right. The DCU could have been built by Grant Morrison instead of Tom King, but James Gunn didn't quote offer anything to write, unquote. I wonder if they mean with that statement he didn't really offer, Grant Morrison any money, or what Grant Morrison would have considered a reasonable amount to write. But article by Spence McCauley published back on the 18th, which is of course Saturday. So let's look at this. All right, so somewhere across the multiverse exists a timeline where instead of CIA agent turned DC writer Tom King, James Gunn tapped acclaimed Final Crisis scribe Grant Morrison to help him build out the cinematic DCU. Sadly, ours is one where DC Studios, quote, didn't offer, unquote, him even a TV miniseries to work on. So basically, he didn't even think to ask Morrison, is basically what he's saying here. Spencer's saying here. Their DC bibliography, including such other seminal works as Animal Man Volume 1, JLA Volume 1, and All-Star Superman Volume 1, Morrison revealed their unfortunate distance from Gunn's new film franchise while answering fan questions as part of a recent Ask Me Anything Q&A session held with members of Reddit's Reddit DC Comics community. Met with an inquiry as to their, quote, thoughts on the state of non-comic superhero content today, e.g. movies and TV shows, in parentheses there. And is there any chance of you writing for Gunn's DCU in the coming future, unquote. The Batman and Robin Volume 1 writer answer in order, first opining, quote, there's a lot of great material, some not so great. I love Peacemaker and, in brackets, Marvel Studios' Eyes of Wakanda, unquote. And then revealing, quote, like fools, the DCU didn't offer me anything to write, unquote. So they didn't even bother to ask him. I guess that's what they're getting at here. Quote, even though I've created and developed 3 seasons of television in the last 10 years, he playfully exclaimed, quote, imagine an Animal Man show or 7 Soldiers, unquote. See if anybody's saying anything here before. And again, a friendly reminder to both my Rumble and my YouTube viewers. If you guys haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing this thing, so we can get some more friendly people to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. And with that being said, in parentheses here, and for those curious, Morrison, in parentheses, and for those curious, Morrison's reference to his tenure on the Suicide Squad comes by way of his aforementioned Animal Man run, wherein he played, with the book's surreal metatextual nature, to self-insert himself as the writer, an omnipotent being who is able to manipulate reality with his words and cared little for the fact that he had essentially ruined the titular hero's life. Eventually blinking into non-existence at the end of Morrison's time on Animal Man due to the book's storytelling duties being handed over to Peter Milligan. The writer one more would make one more appearance in John Ostrander and Kim Yale's Suicide Squad Volume 1, number 58, in parentheses, as well as a single panel cameo in the main War of the Gods Volume 1 event book via flashback to this exact moment, in parentheses, wherein a sudden onset case of writer's block causes him to meet his end at the hands of a raging werebeast. Unquote. Interesting way to end somebody there, or end a character. Now, to be fair, Gunn is of course under no obligation to hire any specific talent to work on the DCU, nor has there been any sort of promise made to Morrison regarding an opportunity to do so. True enough, but and it's not like Morrison would have to replace King outright. In parentheses, despite how much joy it would bring pretty much everyone. I take it a lot of people are not too thrilled with Tom King's writings. Then I've heard Yellow Flash criticize Tom King's writings quite a bit too over the years here, as he could easily just be given a separate project or serve as a late addition to the overall planning team. I do need to go off camera here for another quick moment. I'm going to put some music on for a moment while I stepped away from the camera for a moment. I'll be right back as soon as I do this. I'm back. Thanks for sticking around here. Anyways, as we continue on with this particular article here. However, these facts do not change the objectively insane reality that rather than someone whose contributions to DC lore are some of the most well-received, endearing, and celebrated in the entire canon, the publisher's cinematic future is instead being handed over to a guy who claimed that an unmodified Catwoman could outthink and outspeed the entirety of the Flash family, turn Supergirl into a reclusive, emotionally closed-off, high fantasy-style space adventurer whose run on Omega Man Volume 3 basically boils down to, in parentheses, CIA-enhanced interrogation apologia, and who has openly bragged about both planning and helping spearhead the United States 2003 invasion of Iraq. This bafflement is only exacerbated by the fact that Gunn explicitly called All-Star Superman as a direct inspiration for Superman and plans to have Damian Wayne, originally created for Morrison's run on Batman Volume 1, serve as the DCU's resident Robin. If DC Studios is just going to use their work as a blueprint, why not just go straight to the source? Interesting point there. Imagine being DC or Gunn or even King himself and thinking, quote, who needs Doom Patrol or 52 or the multiversity when you can have heroes in crisis and bat, cat, bat, cat. Am I right? Actual hyper-crisis level insanity, the gentry are winning. While there, of course, always exists the possibility for Morrison to be brought on board to the DCU sometime in the future, the writer revealed elsewhere in the thread that he currently has, quote, no major project planned at DC, unquote, adding, quote, but that's not to say I might not do something else there, unquote. All right. So there we have that, and that should do it for the articles tonight. I believe we're kind of getting, we're at 42 minutes here, so probably a good time to move on from that and get into the wrestling wrap-up, as it were. As I said, we're going to take a look back over the weekend, go back to last Friday's SmackDown, of course, look back to Saturday's Wrestle Dream, AEW Wrestle Dream, and then look ahead to tonight's Monday Night Raw. So let's go ahead and get into that then. I'm just trying to look for the... So Friday Night SmackDown came to Friday Night SmackDown came from the SAP Center in San Jose, California, on the USA Network, with Corey Graves and Vic Joseph on commentary. Only match of the evening saw in a women's tag title match, Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair successfully defend against NXT duo of double champion, WWE Speed, and NXT North American Women's Champions Phil Ruka and Zarya. Then of course Sami Zayn in an open challenge put up the United States title, dropping it to Ilya Dragunov, making his return. There was some criticism from some fans out there that why when Sami does get the title, he only has short title reigns, but this one was Sami's idea, as he wanted to really push the title into a more, and figured by putting it on Dragunov, it would help both the title and him. It's now just up to WWE to book him, right? Then you had in a tag team match, in a match continuing to highlight the tag teams of SmackDown, show just their former WE Tag Team Champions Motor City Machine Guns of Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley defeated Los Garza's Angel Umberto. And on title match, Drew McIntyre defeated Cody Rhodes via DQ. This was in the main event. Drew McIntyre defeated Cody Rhodes via DQ when it looked like Rhodes supposedly took advantage of the rule that you still can maintain the title even if you get disqualified. So, which again is leading to some more build, as of course they're leading to more build towards. Also on the SmackDown, of course, the mysterious attack on Jacob. Originally, it was going to be Jacob Fatu, who was going to be challenging Cody Rhodes for the title before he was attacked backstage. This was to write him off television so he could go get surgery done on his mouth to correct some issues there for Jacob Fatu. So Jacob Fatu may be out for a while here as well. Now, of course, moving on to Saturday. Moving on to Saturday here. As happening on Saturday, of course, was of course Collision and so you had Collision Tailgate Brawl, which was the pre-show before Wrestle Dream. So we'll talk about both of those here. So Saturday's AEW events took place at the Chavez Arena in St. Louis, Missouri. The pre-show, the Saturday Tailgate Brawl for Wrestle Dream, which served as the pre-show, with Excalibur, Nigel McGuinness, Tony Schiavone, and Matt Menard on commentary. The opening match saw in an 8-man tag match the Death Riders of Claudio Castagnoli, Daniel Garcia, Pac, and Wheeler Yuta, defeating the conglomeration trio of Orange Cassidy, Tomohiro Ishii, Kyle O'Reilly, and Roderick Strong. Roderick Strong, not a member of the conglomeration, but part of the Paragon with Kyle O'Reilly. Then Eddie Kingston and Hook defeated the frat house duo of Griff Garrison and Cole Carter, who had Jack Jameson in their corner, in a tag team match. In a women's tag team match, Harley Cameron and former TNT champion Willow Nightingale defeated the Top Gods duo of Megan Bain and Penelope Ford. In the main event of the pre-show there saw three-time AEW World Tag Team Champions FTR of Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler with Stokely in their corner, defeating the team of Jet Speed of Speedball Mike Bailey and the Jet Kevin Knight. Of course, the final match, the main event match of the pre-show, spilt over into Wrestle Dream, and actually, with the pyros going off and everything, opened up Wrestle Dream. So that was said to be quite interesting. Now that we've of course gone through that, let's go through what happened at the pay-per-view itself, Wrestle Dream itself. Of course, after the main event from the pre-show ended, with Excalibur, Now McGuinness, and Tony Schiavone still on commentary, and Don Callis at times joining them throughout the night. What was originally going to be the opening match of the pay-per-view saw Jamie Hayter defeat Tekla in a one-on-one, in a rehash of their old rivalry from a few years ago in Stardom over the SWA Undisputed Women's World Title. In the $500,000 tag team match, in again a continued mocking of the Young Bucks, calling them the Broke Bucks, as it were. Jurassic Express of Jack Perry and Luchasaurus, who recently made their return to AEW, defeated Matt and Nick Jackson, the former EVPs, hearkening back to the early days of AEW back in 2019. These two were two of the top teams. You have a battle of two former AEW World Tag Team Champions here, but the Young Bucks, I believe, being a 3-time tag team champions, as well as and Jurassic Express being former tag team. In a match to determine the number one contenders to the AEW World Trios titles, in a Tornado 6-man tag, the Hurt Syndicate of Shelton Benjamin, Bobby Lashley, and MVP defeated the Demand of Bishop Khan, Toy Leona, and Ricochet, with some people scratching their heads as why this should be happening. As of late, of course, the Hurt Syndicate has been more of a face team of late. They kind of started out as a heel, but then slowly but surely shifted to being faces, as the fans have really taken to the Hurt Syndicate. And we will find. Well, I'll mention that in a bit here. While that happened. Let's see. Then, in the match for the AEW TNT title, Kyle Fletcher successfully retained on Mark Briscoe. After their series of matches over the past couple of years. Chris Statlander successfully retained the women's world title over Toni Storm. As they now will both be moved on to other. And then after Statlander's match, Mercedes Moné came out to challenge her for title versus title match, only for interim Ring of Honor Women's World Television Champion Mina Shirakawa to come out and challenge Moné again. I'm not too thrilled about this. Mercedes Moné came out on top, becoming now 11-belt Moné. Now, a little bit of news. The following day, which was yesterday, Moné then went up to Winnipeg, Canada, and won the Winnipeg Women's Championship from Jody Threat, becoming 12-belt Moné. Currently holding the most titles concurrently in history of any wrestler. Even outdoing the 10 belts that were, that Ultimo Dragon had back in the 90s there. Then in a match for the AEW World Tag Team, the World Tag Team Champions Brodito of Ring of Honor World Champion Bandito and Brody King retained over the Don Callis family members of AEW Unified Champion Kazuchika Okada and IWGP Champion Konosuke Takeshita. And some of the issues between Okada and Takeshita, they seem to be building a match between those two. It would appear as Takeshita, as Okada the Rainmaker, Takeshita the Ace. Both of them are pretty much alpha males who aren't going to take a backseat to anybody. And yet, it's like they're right in each other's face a lot of times. And then in the main event, of course, well, not the main event, but for the AEW World title, Adam Page retained over Samoa Joe. Following the match, and this is where we were talking about earlier with the trios titles. So Samoa Joe, who is 1/3 of the AEW World Trios champions as well, as he was basically lifting, congratulating Page. He decided to turn on Page, and the other members of the Ops came out and basically did an op on Adam Page, looking to continue that feud. As now all three members of the Ops have turned heel after attacking Adam Page. Now, of course, Samoa Joe and Hobbs have been heels before in AEW. I believe this would be Shibata's first time of being like a full heel in AEW, which of course the match earlier in the night, the number one contendership tornado tag match, set up a match for this coming Wednesday's Dynamite, in which the Ops of Powerhouse Hobbs, Samoa Joe, and Katsuyori Shibata will be defending the AEW World Trios titles against the Hurt Syndicate of Shelton Benjamin, Bobby Lashley, and MVP. And the main event saw Darby Allin defeat Jon Moxley in an I Quit match. That a couple of things of interest that happened in this match as well. Of course, Sting came out to help Darby Allin win the match. Also, this match got some there are a few people out there, including former AEW coach Sarah Stock, coming out and criticizing AEW for this match for possibly being too violent, most notably, for the scene or for the spot where Moxley tried to drown Darby Allin in a fish tank. So that's all I got from that. David shows up. Thanks for popping in there. So now what we're going to do, looking ahead to tonight's Monday Night Raw, of course. Let me get that, and then we'll move on to this day in each history. I'm just trying to find, let's see. Oh, yeah, there we go. Vince. Let's look ahead to tonight's Monday Night Raw as WWE continues its build towards Survivor Series next month. Tonight's Raw coming from Sacramento, California. So let me grab that. Let's see. Coming from the Golden One Center in Sacramento, California on Netflix. The matches already signed for tonight's Monday Night Raw include Becky Lynch defending the Women's Intercontinental title against Maxine Dupree. Dominic Mysterio defeating the Intercontinental Champion against Rusev. And in a match for the World Tag Team titles, the Judgment Day's Finn Balor and JD McDonough will be defending those titles, AJ Styles and Dragon Lee. So that's all I got for the wrestling wrap-up. So we're finished with that. Actually, before I do wrap up, I do need to go off camera one more time. So be patient. I'm almost finished here, guys. I'll be right back. I'm back. So with that, so today is, of course, Monday, October 20th, 2025. So let's go ahead and take a look back at this day in Nietzsche's history. History! So let's see, 1955. Let's see, 2000 and 2010. All right. So, first off, we're going to head back 70 years ago, as on this date 70 years ago, back in 1955, the 45th and final issue of Teenage Romances from St. John went on sale on this date back in 1955. It sold for 10 cents, 32 pages, at a time when comics were more than just superheroes. You had all kinds of different genres, including westerns, romance, more for the girls at the time. So the 45th and final issue of Teenage Romances from St. John Comics went on sale on this date back in 1955. And 1955 is just so nice that we're going to hit it twice. There's also on this date, so like grab that, of course. Also on this date, 70 years ago today, back in 1955. Let's see. Dick Hutton, who would eventually go on to become the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, would regain the Ohio title from Pat O'Connor in Columbus, Ohio. So on this date, 70 years ago as well, Dick Hutton would regain the Ohio heavyweight title from Pat O'Connor. A battle of two guys who would eventually, of course, win would both wear the NWA World Heavyweight title. This would be, of course, Hutton's second reign as Ohio heavyweight champion. So that happened. Now moving ahead to the year 2000, on this date in 2000, 25 years ago today. Okay, so on season 2 of SpongeBob SquarePants begins on Nickelodeon with the premiere of the episodes Something Smells and Bossy Boots. Starting with this season, the show's animation style switches from cell animation to digital ink and paint. So season 2, in which they switch from cell animation to digital ink and paint, would start on this date 25 years ago today, in the year 2000. And finally, moving ahead to the year 2010, which was 15 years ago, on this date 15 years ago today, 2010. Okay, Hood's Entertainment's The Quasar Stigmata Portrait of the Empress was released in Japan on this date 15 years ago today. So the Hood's Entertainment's OVA, The Quasar Stigmata Portrait of the Empress, which of course follows the anime of the Quasar of Stigmata, would premiere on this date back in 2010. All right, so with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. Hope everybody enjoyed the show. Of course, we'll be back here with more Niche Needs tomorrow. And with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.